So that's cultivator motivation. So today at lunchtime, FedEx came and delivered a box with flowers in it. And in the middle of lunch, Venerable Sultram brought the flowers in a vase over to me, and there was a card in it that said, from Shanti Deva Center, and thanking me for going there to teach 3 weeks ago. And when I sat there and looked at the flowers, I was thinking of all the causes and conditions that brought that moment together. The physical causes and conditions of the evolution of the universe and the evolution of this planet, and biological laws and physical laws and chemical laws and all that cause and effect that produced those particular flowers. And I thought of all the people involved with the flowers who planted them and harvested them and packed them and transported them and so on. And the kindness of the folks at the Shanti Deva Center in New York City, their virtuous motivation of offering them. And it was quite apparent to me that these flowers had nothing at all to do with me, and that there was just this huge interdependent happening of physical things and animate and inanimate things, sentient beings and their environments, and that none of this was mine. It had nothing to do with me. And so then offering the flowers on the altar and trying to generate bodhicitta while doing it and contemplating emptiness while doing it was the only way to offer the flowers, the only thing to do with the flowers. And offering them with that kind of understanding felt quite good. There was no holding on to things. And it just seemed the right thing to do, to offer it for the benefit of all beings and contemplate emptiness and then dedicate the merit for all these sentient beings. So I use this as an example because I think as much as we can in our daily life, get the I out of things, then the easier our life becomes. Whenever we're assessing things through the viewpoint of a truly existent I, then all sorts of opinions and judgments come in. Do I like this? Don't I like it? What does it mean when the other people did this? Yeah, just all sorts of other extraneous thoughts come in that really clutter the mind. Then, of course, a lot of, most of them are just pure garbage. So as much as we can to try in our days to just watch the big dependent arisings as they function without the need for any kind of separate I that is involved in it, or is the key and most important point in it. And so, in that way, think of other sentient beings and generate love and compassion, and of course, bodhicitta for them. So may that aspiration to attain full awakening be our motivation this evening. So in a similar way, if we could, if we were to know all the causes and conditions that enables all of us to be here this evening, it would probably be too much for our small little minds to grok. Yeah. And yet that's the reality of the situation. Yeah. And that all these causes and conditions are coming together, but they're changing. So whatever they come together doesn't exist in the next moment.
Not to be argumentative or anything like that, but is it possible that you were a cooperative condition in those flowers arriving here today? You mentioned that you had nothing to do with it, but you did.
Yeah, I
offer
mean,
teachings.
Yeah, they were addressed to somebody. But, aside from that, what I think of as I, the big me that's so important, nothing to do with this. You be good. Okay, so I think we were on the section that was defending the defender's answers, reviewing the defender's answers. Okay, if nobody's remembering, I'll just start with the opening volleys then. It's a good review. So, just as ordinary conversations can start in many ways, so too debates may start in many ways. In expressing a position, a defender is not limited to just giving the 5 answers addressing the challenger's arguments. For defenders are frequently called upon to give information explaining their thought, including giving the subjects for the debate, the reasons, the more and more, so the definitions, illustrations, and so on. Thus, in this section, there are some examples of ways that a debate may be started. Okay, so sometimes when we learn the debate structure, we just think, okay, all debates are like this, and you can only give one of these 5 answers and that's it. But it's not actually like that. If you're going to respond, you can give those answers, but then, the challenger may ask you to explain something or give an example or, so on and so forth. So you kind of have to know something and know what you're talking about, hopefully. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so note well, it would be a good exercise for you and your debate partner to read these exercises out loud as if you were reading the lines of a play. Then you can substitute many things for the phenomena mentioned in these debates in order to create your own debates as you go through these. Okay, so here are some of the points. Okay, so 1, notice how extremely incremental the movements are from one step to the other. Okay, you may have noticed that when we've been doing the practice debates. 2, notice how the reasons are categorical, not descriptive. They are not necessarily meant to elucidate every point as we go along, just to justify the point. So this is important when he's talking about categorical versus descriptive. I think what he's meaning is they're things with set definitions, specific categories and specific definitions. They aren't descriptive things where you kind of are, putting in opinions and judgments and stuff like that. And you may have noticed when we first started making our own syllogisms, and even when we've been going through syllogisms and consequences that we've made up, have you noticed how often we've gotten stuck because we don't know the definition of a term, and we're just saying something very descriptive or something opinionated, and so there's no specific definition or meaning so that everybody is talking about the same thing. Okay, so we noticed it when we were trying to make syllogisms of, I'm incompetent because I can't remember anything for more than 5 minutes. Yeah. And, how that isn't a proper syllogism. And so that's completely, opinionated. Uh, and then other things we made too. That one was about ourselves, but when we're trying to judge other things or evaluate other things, if we don't have the same definition, and then what are we talking about? We can't really communicate, and our syllogisms can't really inform us of anything new, because what we wind up with is, well, some things are like this, but some things are not. And then we're like, okay, what did we learn from this? Okay. Okay. Then 3, notice as you say the lines, things go better when you go quickly. I don't know. You are forced to pay attention, and it is easier to remember what was just said and where you are in the flow of the debate. Okay. So don't languish as you're doing it. Then 4, notice that at every stage there could be more debate. The defender might give a wrong answer. The challenger might have to fling a consequence for a bad reason. The challenger might have to follow up to ask more questions about a suspect line of reasoning. Okay, so it's not just like, very mechanical. There's many different ways you can go. Recall that with the first debate of a session, the challenger begins by reciting the seed syllable of Manjushri. So here, treating the first sample as beginning a new session of debate, the challenger begins with the homage to Manjushri. Supporting comments are in brackets after the lines. The first sample begins with a question about a statement of pervasion. Okay, so why don't we start here? And the two of you, Venerable Tarpa, you be the challenger, Venerable Semke be the defender. And just read the lines.
D, the subject, just the way Manjushri debated, is whatever a color necessarily red?
I accept.
It follows that whatever is a color is necessarily red.
I accept.
Well, then it follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is red.
Why?
Because of being a color, you asserted the pervasion.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's a good. Then Venerable Ho, Venerable Jampa, you do the next debate here. Okay, I'll read the introduction. The challenger might start a debate by asking the defender to posit a definition. Notice that the volleys back and forth are typically contentious.
It follows that there is no definition of a functioning thing.
Why?
It follows that there is a definition of a functioning thing.
I accept.
It follows that there is not posited.
There is the subject, that which is able to perform a function.
It follows that the subject, that which is able to perform a function, is the definition of a functioning thing.
I accept.
Give a reason, justifying that the subject, that which is able to perform a function, is the definition of a functioning thing.
Because first, it and functioning thing are ascertained as having the 8 approaches of pervasion that exist between a definition and diffinendum, and also second, it and functioning thing are established in the relationship of a definition and diffinendum.
I accept it.
No, wait a minute. Yeah, the C's are mixed up here. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, right.
Okay, there's typos
Sorry.
in it. Yeah. Well, or something, I don't know. Because we had the challenger asked the defender a question, and then the defender answered. So that second C should be a D. Yeah. Yeah, right. Then there should be another C where the challenger repeats it, what the defender just said, and then the defender says, I accept. Okay, then the debaters would go on to establish each part of this. Yeah, so the thing that the challenger would then go on. If the second C is a D, then right after that, the challenger would go on to establish each part of this, asking the defender, what are the 8 approaches? And then the defender would go through them and, and justify their point, okay, in order to prove the relationship. Okay, then another way, the challenger might start a debate by asking the defender to posit a division.
It follows that there is no division of colors into 2.
Why?
It follows that there is a division of colors into 2.
I accept.
It follows that there is not. Posit the division of colors into 2.
There is such a division. The subject, the 2 primary colors and secondary colors.
It follows that when colors are divided into 2, these are the 2 that are to be posited.
I accepted it.
Now it follows that it is not because there is no division of primary colors.
The reason that is there no division of primary colors is not established.
It follows that there is a division of primary colors.
I accept.
It follows that there is not. If primary colors are divided, how many are there?
If primary colors are divided, there are 4.
It follows that there are not 4. Posit the 4.
There are 4. The subject, the 4, blue, yellow, white, and red.
Okay. Does it drive you a little bit crazy with the challenger saying one thing and then contradicting themselves the next thing, and that this is supposed to be the way things go? And I'm wondering, why is there this thing? The challenger says that there's not 2 divisions into color because there's no division of primary colors. That doesn't have anything to do with anything. So do any of you understand why the challenger's bringing that up?
I think that they use the form "it follows" just as a stylistic segue. So it's just a way to continue the debate. So they've done the divisions into 2, and now they're doing it into 4. It's just it follows, moving on to the next bit.
Yeah, it sounds like a completely different debate.
Yeah, it's just a segue. So it follows, moving. It's just a stylistic thing, I think.
No, but it doesn't follow.
What?
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Then the next. So it says, you see, this can go on and on. It is a good way to practice the definitions and divisions and the debate format at the same time. Okay. Then the challenger might start a debate by asking the defender to posit an illustration.
It follows that there is no illustration of a sense-direct perceiver apprehending a visible form. Why?
It follows that there is an illustration of a sense-direct perceiver apprehending a visible form.
I accept.
It follows that there is not. Posit an illustration of a sense-direct perceiver apprehending a visible form.
There is something. The subject, a visual direct perceiver apprehending blue.
It follows that the subject, a visual direct perceiver apprehending blue, is an illustration of a sense-direct perceiver apprehending a visible form.
I accept.
Give a reason justifying that the subject, a visual direct perceiver apprehending blue, is an illustration of a sense-direct perceiver apprehending a visible form.
Because of being something that serves as a basis for illustrating a sense-direct perceiver apprehending a visible form by way of being a non-mistaken, non-conceptual knower that is produced in dependence on its own uncommon, empowered condition, the eye sense power, and an observed object condition, a visible form.
It's like these guys can't make up their mind. Yeah, there is. Then the debaters can analyze each part of this. Okay, so it would go on. Okay, serves as a basis for illustrating the sense-direct perceiver blue by being okay. So then they would go on to discuss why is it is the sense direct perceiver apprehending a visible apprehending blue? Why is it non-mistaken? Why is it non-conceptual? Why is it a knower? Why is it produced in dependence on its own common empowering condition, the eye sense power, and an observed object condition, a visible form? So you would go through each point and examine each point and make sure that held. Okay. So then the debaters can analyze each part of this. Recall from chapter 20 that an illustration is described as illustrating a definiendum by way of manifesting the qualities of the defining characteristics. For instance, red serves as a basis for illustrating color by way of being suitable as a hue. Okay, so a blue visual a visual direct perceiver apprehending blue, okay, is a proper illustration of a visible direct perceiver because it illustrates the definiendum by way of manifesting the qualities of the defining characteristics, and then they would go through and look at each of those characteristics to show why that illustration had those characteristics of being non-mistaken, non-conceptual, arising from its own empowering condition, and so on. Okay. The challenger might also start a debate by asking the defender to answer a comparison of phenomena. The procedure for that important framework for debate is laid out in chapter 25 in the next chapter. Okay? Everybody okay? Yeah. Yeah, it would be good to go back, have a review session on your own and go back, with a partner and read these two out loud. And then when you get stuck, stop and ask your partner to help you understand why, your role said what they said or why their role said what they said.
When they go back and the guy says that he accepts it and then the guy reverses what he said.
Yeah.
To me, that kind of makes sense when you think about
when you can think of two people who are really hot on a topic,
Mm-hmm.
and one starts to turn the other guy's mind, but then they won't really go there, so they'll flip back to their point. I mean, I can imagine it. In that way, it makes kind of sense
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, it makes sense because you get somebody think, oh, there is, and that person thinks that way. And then you say, no, there isn't. And then they have to think of the reasons it's not like that. So it gets somebody looking at both sides of the picture. Mm-hmm.
It seems like the challenger is trying to get the defender to state and accept what they believe, and then they show
Yeah.
what they want them to clear. They want to clarify what the defender already holds
Right.
as true.
Right. Yeah, because the challenger has to understand what the defender thinks. Yeah, and then the challenger can really go into depth about why the defender thinks that way. Okay, so then reviewing the defender's answers. The last point here on the procedures in debate is how to review the defender's answers. Sometimes the defender will give a bad answer, and after that, the debate has to follow out a line of reasoning that flows from the bad answer. Okay? So think of politics. Yeah? You say the wrong thing, somebody calls you on it, but then you have to defend the wrong thing that you said, and then, the opposition keeps asking you, but what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And you're too proud to say, I blew it. So you keep giving many wrong answers until finally you give up and you realize, you gotta say what's true. Or either that. So this is imputing a negative motivation on the part of the politician. But somebody may sincerely believe that, this and such is a good reason to do something. And then, you have to have a debate about it and figure out why that person believes that. And then ask them questions to see if they can really justify it.
Screwy, and here's what comes up is, like we were told in this book, that the defender has to answer truthfully, and only the challenger can kind of mess around with things.
They've told us that.
But then later in this chapter, the answers that the defender gives, the way he makes the comments about them, it seems like the defender isn't being honest.
No, it seems to me the defender's trying to be honest, but the defender's kind of dumb. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're saying what they think, but they're really, a little bit nutty, and we encounter that a lot, don't we? Yeah, people all the time state nutty positions and then try and defend them, and sometimes we're those nutty position holders too. Yeah. I mean, we could have a great debate over the best place to put the spatula in the kitchen, and it's better to put it here, why, because, da, 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 da. But, and then you take each part of that reason, and then you tear it apart and show, oh, but if you put it there, apple juice is going to spill on it. If you, and if you put it there, then, somebody's going to trip over it. And yeah, and you go back and refute all those wrong places to put the spatula. Yeah. Or you say, if you put it there, somebody's going to trip on it, and somebody else is going to say no pervasion. Wherever there is a spatula, it's not. Wherever there is a place where a spatula is, isn't necessarily a place where people trip, or you make a you go through the whole thing. So yeah, we should try that next time an issue comes up. Try and turn it into a debate, and yeah, because he's been asking us to notice in our daily life when people say certain things or do certain things. So this would be a good example. I mean, I was actually thinking getting a little bit further on. Well, I won't mention it now. We'll see if we get there. But I was thinking of it in terms of, because there's the big debate now about impeachment, and what are suitable causes to impeach somebody. Yeah. And so the Constitution says high crimes and misdemeanors. Then, what is the definition of high crimes? What is the definition of misdemeanors? And then it has a and so forth in there, doesn't it? There's other things besides that. Yeah. So then you can have a debate. Well, does somebody have to commit a crime? And, is a crime an impeachable offense? Yeah. And what's the definition of an impeachable offense? And is a crime an illustration of that? Well, what kind of crime? Jaywalking, or or something else? And so what's the definition of crime? What's the definition of impeachable offense? Okay. Yeah. And what about low crimes? Yeah, can't you have a low crime? If you can have a high crime, why can't you have a low crime and a misdemeanor? And so so there's so much discussion about that now, and you can see how it really fits into this whole debate format. If and how people you have to come up with a definition. You have to come up with proper illustrations that fit. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just, it's craziness, which is what it is, now. But it's quite interesting because there's specific terms that are being thrown around, but nobody has a common definition, and the Constitution didn't define them. Yeah. So then who is responsible for creating the definition of these things? Yeah. So anyway, the point is that this is related to our life. Okay, it's not just theoretical blah blah. So so it would really be good. We could get the Dems and the Repubs together, teach them debate, and they could start out practicing with a spatula, and then they could move on from there. Yeah, a gavel. Yeah. Where do you put your gavel? So, reviewing the defender's answers. The last point here on the procedures in debate is how to review the defender's answers. Sometimes the defender will give a bad answer, and after that, the debate has to follow out a line of reasoning that flows from the bad answer. Okay, eventually, if the skills and knowledge of the challenger are adequate, and the defender is alert and open-minded, if the defender will be brought to the moment of realizing that the whole line of reasoning that he or she has been defending is just wrong. At that moment, they resign their position from the government and blame somebody else for their own mistakes. Yeah. So at that point, the defender contradicts an earlier answer, and that brings that particular line of reasoning to an end. Okay. So here is, how when he was talking about to have a good debate, how you need people who really want to get at the truth and not people who just want to be right. And so you can see, how important that criteria for having a reasonable debate is, that both parties really sincerely want to get at the truth. They don't just want to be right. They don't just want to win the next election. And so, then you can see what happens in a political way and how that messes up the whole debate structure. And if you try and do that in a monastery, they'll call you on it. Yeah, if you're just trying to make yourself right and make yourself a big shot, yeah, they'll definitely call you on it. Okay, then the challenger. So after the defender realized the ship is going down, okay, then the challenger leads the defender back through the line of reasoning in reverse order and makes sure the defender now gives the correct answer to all the consequences that were denied on the way out. Okay, so the defender gave this wrong answer, and then this one, and then this one, and then over here they realize, I goofed. Then the challenger goes back and restates this one and has the defender give the right answer, and then restates this one and the defender, until you get back to the first wrong answer. So to do that, you have to have a really good memory of the order in which the things went in the debate. Yeah. So it's good to have cheat sheets. But you can see how doing this really trains your memory. Yeah. Okay. This is the review, and it goes back to the point where the defender gave the first bad answer that set them off on that line of reasoning. In the reviewing process, the defender must accept all the challenger's statements or, upon objection, receive further justification for these reasons until they can be accepted. So when you're going backwards and challengers making the defender look at each false reason, if the defender isn't really clear on why something is a false reason, and they come back and say the reason isn't established or no pervasion, then the challenger stops there and goes through the argument again to prove, to make sure that the defender really gets what the right answer is and why their old answer didn't work. Okay. You can see that because of this scrutiny and repetition, the debate can follow any number of routes. And it also really makes you remember what you learned, because there's so much repetition and going back over it again and again if you said the wrong thing. Okay. So the debate can follow any number of routes, one consequence leading the discussion to an ancillary topic, then eventually returning to proceed ahead on the route of the primary topic. So here is a snippet of a debate in the implied form. What does implied form mean? Anyway, in the implied form that demonstrates this process in brief. I don't know why he put the word implied in there. Explanatory comments are in brackets after the debater's lines. Okay, so we go there. Venerable Yeshe and Venerable Sepal, you want to read this debate?
It follows that whatever is a color is necessarily red.
I accept.
Then it follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is red.
Why?
Because of being a color, you asserted the provision that whatever is a color is necessarily red.
The reason is not established.
Read the stuff.
The reason that the color of a white conch shell is a color is not established.
It follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is a color because of being white.
The reason that the color of a white conch shell is white is not established.
This guy's really.
It follows.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
It follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is white because of being one with the color of a white religious conch shell.
I accept that the color of a white conch shell is white.
Sa. It follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is a color.
I accept that the color of a white conch shell is a color.
Cha. It follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is red because of being a color.
I accept that the color of a white conch shell is red.
It follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is not red because of being white.
There is no pervasion. It is not the case that whatever is white is necessarily not red.
It follows that whatever is white is necessarily not red because a common locus of the two, white and red, does not exist.
The reason that a common locus of the two, white and red, does not exist is not established.
It follows that a common locus of the two, white and red, does not exist because those two are mutually exclusive.
Well, I accept that a common locus of the two, white and red, does not exist.
Tsa. It follows that whatever is white is necessarily not red.
I accept that whatever is white is necessarily not red.
Cha. It follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is not red.
I accept that the color of a white conch shell is not red.
So, it follows that the subject, the color of a white religious conch shell, is red because of being a color. You asserted the reason and the pervasion.
Well, there's no pervasion that whatever is a color is necessarily red.
It follows that whatever is a color is not necessarily red.
I accept.
Oh, ha, cha.
Now again, come on.
Oh, ah, cha. Oh, ah, cha.
And you jump up and down and you clap right in her face. Okay. So, very good. Do you want to go through and yeah. Okay. So let's start at the beginning. Okay. So Challenger says it follows that whatever is a color is necessarily red. Okay. And then the defender is, I don't know, he's pretty dumb. He says, I accept. Okay. Now, of course, they're using this as a ridiculous debate, but it could be something that's much more subtle that we would probably agree with. Okay, but this is his first bad answer. He accepts that. Then the challenger says, then it follows that the subject, the color of a white conch shell, is red. The defender says, why? I mean, this guy's really dumb. And then the challenger says, because of being red, you asserted the pervasion, that whatever is a color is necessarily red. You accepted that, so I'm just, giving you something that follows upon what you accepted yourself. Okay. Then the defender, he's trying to get out of it. He says, or either that he's either trying to get out of it or he's really, really dumb. Okay. He says, the reason that the color of a white conch is a color is not established. In other words, he doesn't believe that the color of a white conch, which is white, is a color. He doesn't believe white is a color. Okay? Yeah, so it's another wrong answer. And the challenger says, it follows that the subject, the color of a white conch, is a color because of being white. You know, it's like the color of the color of a white thing is white. Yeah. Okay. So the reason in the earlier consequence, which was color, becomes the new point of clarification because this guy didn't accept that white was a color. So now you have, now the challenger had to help this person see that white is in fact a color. Okay. So the challenger gives a new reason in support of the new point of clarification. Then the defender says, the reason that the color of a white religious conch shell is white is not established. So the challenger gave a perfectly good reason. Yeah. And the defender is saying, no, it's not the reason you gave, doesn't pertain to the subject. Yeah, the reason isn't established that the color of a okay. Yeah, so the color of a white conch shell is white is not established. Okay. So then the challenger says it follows that the subject, the color of a white conch is white. Yeah, so he's still trying to prove each step here because the guy's not getting it. Okay, so the color of a white conch is white because of being one with the color of a white conch. Okay, so he's assuming that this guy understands debate language like one with the color of a white conch. Okay, so just as before, the reason in the earlier consequence, white, becomes the new point of clarification in this consequence. Okay, because the challenger has to show the defender that white is a color. No, it's right. No, that the color of a white shell is white. Okay, and giving the reason because it's one with the color of a white shell. Okay, and the challenger gives a new reason in support of it. So then the defender says, is everybody following so far? Okay, then the defender says, I accept that the color of a white shell is white. Okay, so the defender is going, I get it. And there's a light bulb that goes off. So here the defender has seen the error, and with this answer is reversing the line of reasoning resulting from trying to deny that the color of a white shell is a color. Okay, so now we're going to go backwards. So the challenger says, Sa, it follows that the subject, the color of a white conch, is a color. Okay, so here the challenger says Sa, meaning finished, because the defender has contradicted one of their earlier answers, because earlier he said the color of a white conch is not a color. Okay. In the immediately preceding line, the defender accepted that the subject is white. That the subject is white was given as the reason to prove that this is a color. Thus, the challenger has gone back to make sure that the defender now accepts that the subject is a color. Okay, so at first, the defender was saying that the color. Well, I can't remember what he said first. Anyway, huh? Yeah, we have to go back at left. He said, okay. So it follows that the color of a conch is a color. Okay, so you're going back to the thing that was just before that. Okay, And then the challenger says, Sa, it follows that the subject, the color of a white conch, is red because of being a color. So the challenger is restating the unwanted consequence that resulted from the defender's accepting that all colors are red. So he's going back another further step. Okay. So earlier, the defender tried to deny the reason, and that did not work. There's no effective answer to this consequence, but the challenger offers it again. So this challenger doesn't want to give up, and he's reached another point where he's stuck. Okay, so he says, I accept that the color of a white conch is red. Okay, so that was the second bad answer to the unwanted consequence. Yeah. And the challenger says it follows that the subject, the color of a white conch, is not red because of being white. The challenger moves to the option of trying to prove to the defender that the color of a white thing is not red. Okay. And then the defender says there's no pervasion. That is, it is not the case that whatever is white is necessarily not red. So even though the defender had gotten where he realized his wrong answer, in going back and trying to show him all of his previous wrong answers, he's not getting it. Yeah. And he's still giving wrong answers. And so the challenger is having to go back and again refute all these wrong answers. Okay. So the defender says there's no pervasion. That is, it is not the case that whatever is white is necessarily not red. So the defender continues to try to maintain this bad line of reasoning and gives another bad answer. Okay. So again, either because he really doesn't get it, or he's very arrogant, and doesn't want to give up. Yeah. Then the challenger says, it follows that whatever is white is necessarily not red. Yeah, because a common locus of the two, white and red, doesn't exist. In other words, it follows that whatever is white is not red because there's nothing that is both white and red. Okay. Now the defender could say, oh, but the flag is both white and red. Yeah, I'm sure he could think of another bad answer to give. Okay. And then the challenger would have to say, no, we're talking about one area of the flag. It can't be both white and red. Then you have to see if the defender will understand that. But anyway, the defender didn't say that. So the challenger says it follows that whatever is white is necessarily not red because there's nothing that's both. There's no common locus. Okay, so now the pervasion has become the point of clarification. And the pervasion was that whatever is a color is necessarily red. Okay, then the reason, defender says, the reason that a common locus of the two, white and red, does not exist, that's not established. In other words, again, he's giving a wrong answer. He's saying, oh, you're just saying that there's nothing that's both red and white, but I think there still is something. Okay. Then the challenger says it follows that a common locus of the two, white and red, does not exist because these two are mutually exclusive. Okay. In other words, if it's red, it's not white, and if it's white, it's not red. Come on. And the defender says, I accept that a common locus of the two, white and red, does not exist. Hallelujah. Okay, so here the defender gets it. Now, by accepting the challenger's good reason, that is the end of the line of reasoning resulting from the defender's accepting that the color of a white conch is red. Okay, so you've had to do all of that to get back to that bad answer when he accepted that the color of a white conch is red. So the challenger again goes, "Sa! It follows that whatever is white is necessarily not red." Okay, so you see here the defender has accepted that there is no common locus of white and red. That reason that there is no common locus was given to prove that whatever is white is necessarily not red. That is why the challenger went back to that issue here. Okay, so he's just emphasizing, when the defender accepted that there's no common locus, then the challenger is repeating it to make sure the defender really gets it. And the defender does. He says, "I accept that whatever is white is necessarily not red." And the challenger goes, "It follows that the subject, the color of a white conch, is not red." Okay. So he's going back again to this. And the defender says, "I accept that the color of a white conch is not red." It follows that the subject, the color of a white conch, is red. So he's saying the opposite to try and see if the defender really gets it or not. Okay. So the color of a white conch is red because of being a color. You asserted the reason and the privation. So this goes back to the very beginning of the debate. We keep going back and back. Okay. So even though the defender was correct in accepting that the subject is not red, the challenger immediately contradicts the answer to state the fundamental unwanted consequence again. Also, the challenger gives the warning that the defender has already accepted both the reason and the privation, so there is no answer left. Okay. But the defender tries again and says there's no privation. That is, it is not the case that whatever is a color is necessarily red. Oh, well, no. Oh, now okay. Actually, the defender isn't stubborn. He's got it correct here. Okay. So there's no privation. That is, it is not the case that whatever is a color is necessarily red. Now the defender has given up on the original bad answer. Okay, if we go back to look at the very beginning of the debate, okay, the challenger said it follows that whatever is a color is necessarily red, and the defender accepted it. So now we're on that. We've gone all the way back to that. Okay, so now the defender has given up on the original bad answer that precipitated the fundamental unwanted consequence, and both lines of reasoning, the one in which the defender tried to deny the reason of the fundamental consequence. Okay, so he tried to deny the reason of the fundamental consequence. And I think that that was that the color of a white conch shell is red because it's a color. Okay. And the one in which the defender tried to accept the fundamental consequence. Okay, that the color of a white conch isn't white. So then the challenger says it follows that whatever is a color is not necessarily red. We're back at the very beginning, and the challenger is saying it again. And the defender says, "I accept." So then the challenger really gives it to him and does, yes, oh, yeah. It's like, you lost, guy. Okay. But I hope you understand now. And I hope you've learned something. And I've learned something by having to debate this with you and go through it with you. So let's rejoice that we both learned something. Okay. So it's done. It should be done with this kind of good motivation so that everybody's learning in it. Okay. So this sample of debate is quite short. Okay. But sometimes the debaters can go on and on. So you can imagine that sometimes the process of reviewing the defender's answers requires a good memory, but debating helps a person increase the power of their memory. Okay. So once you have developed this skill of reviewing the defender's answers, it will be wise to be sparing in your use of it. Okay. Except with your debate partners who understand that this is part of Buddhist debate. In other words, don't talk to your friends like this. I think I told you that one of my friends was, he started going to the debate school and, doing the debate and everything. And then he started, he was in a relationship with a woman. And then every time they would discuss something, he would go into debate format, and she's like wanting understanding. And he's going, the reason is not established. So he realized that he can't be a debater in a relationship, that other qualities are necessary, and that, debating isn't the thing that is going to create a good relationship. Okay. Once you develop the skill of, it's wise to be sparing in your use of it, except with your debate partner. Okay. Ordinary people will just get aggravated by this checking of the old answers. It seems like nagging. You can probably recall some arguments in your personal life when the other person was saying, oh, and that means you were wrong when you said such and such. And that means you were wrong when you said the other thing too. Okay, so you can imagine the state of that friendship if one person just, is, because in a relationship, the point isn't, usually to get at the truth. The point is to connect in some way. Okay, but you can connect as long as you believe the same fantasy together. I mean, it's true in relationships, isn't it? As long as the two of you agree on something, you connect, even if what you agree on is a total hallucination. Because your objective is not the truth. Your objective is to connect with this person no matter what.
Attachment can be a driving force in a relationship where both people are under the illusion that the other person is the cause of their happiness.
Right.
And that goes along until something happens.
Right. And so that's why you have to agree on the same thing, because that means you're connected and the other person's making you happy. Yeah. But if the other person contradicts what you think, we've all been in relationships, right? With somebody, and we say something that we're sure is right, and the other person said, and especially if it's an emotional thing. Okay, I feel hurt because you didn't say good morning. And then the other person goes, I said good morning, you're just too sensitive. And then we've all done that, and it takes off from there. And nobody's looking for the truth of whether, of whether the person said good morning, or whether the person, meant good morning sincerely, or whether the other person was hearing it correctly or hearing it wrong. That's out the window. Nobody really wants to know that. You just want to win the argument. That's all, But so you go on trying to win the argument, but what you really want is to connect. Yeah. And so then maybe you come back and and you say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You were right to start with. You did say good morning. I didn't have my hearing aids in. It's all my fault. I didn't hear you." You know, you know, and then you live happily ever after. Okay, even though you had your hearing aids in, and the person didn't say good morning, but you had to say that to smooth over the relationship. I was watching once when I was with a couple, and we were, discussing something with another person, and the husband said something that was wrong, and a few of us kind of commented on that. And the wife said, "Oh, no, it was like that. And, it's okay. We'll go on. What you said was right. And we'll act like we did that." And then she was very clever because he was pacified by that. She agreed with him. Then the conversation went on, and later on in the conversation, she said, "Oh, and by the way, it was actually like this," and contradicted, you know, what he had said that she had agreed with to start with. And at that point, he agreed with her. Yeah. So I realized this is how she held her marriage together. You know, he's stuck in an opinion. She agrees. She lets the conversation go on. And then after a while, she slips in her idea or what the right thing is. And because she had initially agreed with him, he is now okay. He doesn't feel threatened. He's now okay with agreeing what she said or what the other people said, you know. Okay. And I thought, she's really smart, you know? I mean, they were married for, I don't know, 40 something years, 40 years about. So, that's how she did it. Yeah. So that's what you do, isn't it? You're all looking pretty grim. Didn't you do that in your relationship? Yeah, okay. Or maybe you didn't do it and you kept the fight going. Yeah, you ever in fights like that? It's like, "No, you didn't say good morning to me. My hearing aids were in and I looked directly at you and you didn't say good morning. Yeah, you're blind. Yeah, can't you read my lips? Yeah, read my lips. I said good morning. Who do you think you are, George Bush, telling me to read your lips?" And then remember he said that? Yeah. What did he say? Read my lips? Wasn't it? He wasn't going to send troops somewhere or something. Yeah. And then he wound up doing it. So, but anyway, this is, you can, when he told us to watch in our experience how people talk to each other, then this is, it's a really good example. And the thing is to watch in our own experience when we get really emotionally involved in something and then we hang on and we're, defending something completely asinine. So I thought this was so cute. It's such a good I mean, this is really a good example. So Sondland, who is the guy who is the U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, who was working with Giuliani to circumvent the Department of State diplomats. Yeah, he testified in Congress today. And what he said about his own role did not correspond with what Fiona Hill said a few days ago. And she was one of the diplomats involved in this whole thing. And so he kind of said, he it was a bunch of excuses about, well, I didn't really know that when Trump said this, it meant that, and I didn't really understand that this was going on. And Hill, after she heard this, said something like, this was a testimony of CYA. But that's exactly what happens in the debate. In this debate about the white conch, the defender kept giving one answer another, even though they didn't make sense, even though they had gone through it already. Yeah. And so this is kind of what happened too, because he yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens, what goes on. And, here are these poor congressional committees trying to figure out who to believe. Yeah. Because, I mean, aside from people lying, you do have people who have different perspectives on the same thing. And they see different things and they hear different things, even though they were both there at the same time. So, yeah, it's difficult, Human beings are difficult. Yeah. I mean, cats, it's easier. They go, yeah, and okay, don't do that. You don't have to have a congressional hearing. So be sparing in using this skill with the untrained. In modern day America, this might result in gunplay. Yikes, what's gunplay? However, for trained people like you and your debate partner, it is an important part of debating in the Buddhist style. Yeah. So what I said was, a good example of what happens in modern day America. Exercise 23.1. The exercises for this chapter are obvious. Practice the snippets of debate that are laid out here. Work with your debate partner, taking turns back and forth as challenger and defender. Once again, notice the following as you practice. So this is review of the beginning of this section. 1, the movements are extremely incremental, but you still go someplace, even though you feel like you're repeating yourself and contradicting yourself. 2, it is easier but still elucidating to use reasons that are categorical, not descriptive. So use things with definitions where you share it, you can establish a definition. 3, it all works better when you go quickly. And 4, at every stage, there could be more debate than what is laid out in the text. Okay, and then he gives you some exercises to do. Okay, as challenger, make up points of clarification and full consequences and state them to the defender. Be creative to set up circumstances for all the answers. As defender, try to give the correct answer. Then together go through the procedure to spell out the answers. Okay, so that'll help you everybody to understand it. Okay. 2, continue the same exercise as above, but add on the challenger's responses after the defender has given an answer, and then practice every option. So, the defender can give, practice the defender giving all sorts of different answers, and then how is the challenger going to respond to that? And 3, practice the opening volleys using lots of different pervasions, definitions, divisions, and illustrations. And 4, practice reviewing the defender's answers. Okay, so for this, the defender may need to be a little slow to answer correctly so that you will have a string of points to review. Okay, so there the defender may try, because you're just doing an example, to say the wrong thing, and then the two of you go back over it, back to the original wrong statement. Okay, so do this in this upcoming week, and that will help you learn these things. You know, from what I saw during the 3 weeks I was gone, you were doing a lot of this, right? Yeah. So do some more, especially the one of reviewing the defender's answers. Chapter 24, Strategies in Debate. So normally we think of a strategy for debate as some sort of offensive or defensive move that will put you at an advantage. We do not normally think of avoiding the fight as a strategy. However, as mentioned in Chapter 15, Choosing Your Debate Partner, the first advice for anyone interested in rational discourse is to choose well your opponents. There is no use wasting your time, and most people are not suitable opponents. This is not meant to be cruel or disrespectful of others. We can all benefit by rational discourse, but most people are simply not prepared or not willing to participate in good faith. Basically, there is no reason to start down the road with somebody if you are not going to go anywhere. So basically what he's saying here is when you debate with somebody who knows this formula and, you know, has studied what we've just been studying so that you can carry out a reasonable debate and come to a reasonable conclusion and you both can learn something. What he's saying is don't just try and do this debate with, you know, when you're talking about religion or politics or whether somebody said good morning or not, with any old person who doesn't know this style of debate, because, you know, they won't be able to follow it. They'll get stuck in trying to win or whatever it is. Okay? So, but also we have to realize that this debate is to get at the truth. Yeah. And when you're in a debate with somebody else where your purpose is to connect with the person, yeah, then doing this kind of debate isn't going to work. Okay, if your purpose is to connect with the person and you know, create some kind of connection and harmony. Okay, so if you meet somebody who has very different political views, rather than trying to debate these things, okay, when you're probably not going to get anywhere, yeah, change your purpose so that your purpose isn't getting at the truth. Your purpose is connecting with somebody because it's good in the country to learn about other people's views and to connect with other people who think differently than we do, you know. And that process of connecting with somebody who thinks differently than we do is just as educational as getting at the truth. So then you might have a discussion with somebody who has completely opposite political or religious views than you do. And you just ask questions, you know, why do you believe this? Why do you believe that? And you don't comment on what the person's saying, but you know, you ask questions, you give them the opportunity to open up and express themselves. And then, you know, they may want to hear your view. And then although your views may be very different, you still wind up with some kind of feeling of connection that you can still talk to each other. Okay, so, you know, just be clear in your mind what the purpose of the discussion you're having with the person is. Yeah, because even if the person starts out being very combative, if you change your mind of like, okay, my purpose right now is not the truth, my purpose is to connect, they're combative, I can still ask them questions. They can say what they want. You know, that can lead to, just by my really listening and asking questions or asking them to explain something further, that will create a feeling of trust. And then, the other person may be also interested later on in what I think. And then they may learn something from that. And in the meantime, I'm learning something from them, because it's really interesting to learn how people think and what people find logical, what people find sensical, and what kind of reasons they bring in to support their beliefs. Yeah, because as I've mentioned many times before, my hypothesis is that first people decide what they believe, then they find scriptures and reason to support it. Yeah. And so, kind of bring that out in the discussion with the other person, but then also check yourself and see if you're doing that too. Yeah. If you're making decisions based on opinion and emotional things, and then you find scripture or reason of some sort to back up your ideas. But if you really look at your own ideas, you realize that your reasons for believing something can be really stupid. Yeah. And that's a very helpful thing to realize about ourselves. Don't you think? Yeah. Yeah. Like I think, that having that debate, asking yourself, well, why am I angry? Oh, they said da 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 da. Yeah, but why are you angry? Why does them saying that, necessitate me getting angry? And then, you look at all the reasons you give, and then you start asking yourself, is there pervasion there? That whenever this happens, I must feel this or I must say that. Yeah. And we say, oh no, there's no pervasion. I don't need to get angry just because somebody, insults me. You think, why did I get angry? They insulted me. Well, why does somebody insulting you make you angry? Is there a pervasion that if somebody insults you, you necessarily need to get angry? Yes, there's pervasion. Why? Because if I don't defend myself, they'll take advantage of me. No, and then you say, no pervasion. There's no pervasion that if I, is there pervasion that if I don't defend myself, they'll take advantage of me? No. Yeah. And so you look at all these reasons, and you kind of debate with yourself, and, check out the pervasions in your own emotional, ridiculous arguments that we make up to justify, how we're responding emotionally.
Can I give an example of a conversation where somebody seems to have a completely different view that I had yesterday or the day before? I had I made an interview with a farmer, and I knew this farmer is involved in killing animals. That is totally opposite from my view. I don't agree with that. So, and the first thing she said, we started off, she said, today we killed 3 pigs. And from my perspective, of course, my heart was dropping. But then I had the goal to understand how she's working. What is her vision? And so I asked her several questions about how she's keeping animals, and how she's treating them, and how she gets the milk, and or the crops, what kind of crops, and what tools does she use, and chemicals and all that. I wanted to understand how she, as a small farmer, works compared to somebody who has a big company like Monsanto. And then in the end, it was super interesting. We came together. We had in the beginning totally opposite views, but then she said, for example, that she really cares about the mother cows, and she knows that baby cows are separated so that we can have the milk in normal industrial production. And she said she can't do that because she knows the baby, the mother cows, they're crying for weeks for their calves. Something like that, And also the way how normally huge companies or farms, big farms, deal with they kill animals in a cool way. So the animals, now the stress, they have fear and such. And small farmers are concerned about that. And so they have different ways to reduce the stress, to minimize it as much as possible. So to understand where she's coming from. And in the end, she said, I want to just continue this lifestyle because it's more friendly to the environment, it's more friendly to nature, it's more friendly to animals. So in there we had something in common. She cared about the future and life basically too. Yeah.
So you found out that somebody that you thought had opposite views than you did actually, that the two of you shared some views together.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is because I came from the perspective of asking questions and wanting to know how she does things.
Right.
And then I could also say, I'm vegetarian, I'm even vegan now, and why? And she was listening because I was listening to her. That was beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if she had said something at the beginning and you said no provision, or the normal way of saying no provision, then you would have been at each other from the very beginning.
Yeah, or even not trying to talk with each other at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Understanding.
Yeah, good example. Good. Okay. Shall we stop? Do you have questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I heard a term for what you were saying, this belief that you've held for a while about how people justify their things, but they already have a belief. They actually have a term for this that somebody was talking to me about while I was gone. It's called confirmation bias. It's a phenomena wherein decision makers have been shown to actively seek out and assign more weight to evidence that confirms their hypothesis and ignore or underweigh evidence that could disconfirm their hypothesis.
Yeah.
So it's like a selection bias and collecting evidence. It's exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
I think they're doing research on this right now in society.
Yeah.
We do it.
Yeah.
I do it.
We do it all the time, don't we?
Yeah.
We do it all the time. Yeah. And we think that we're rational living beings.
I think that's a phenomena that can happen unconsciously, but it's also can be done consciously. And sometimes it's done consciously with people running agencies and such, and it starts to border on corruption.
Oh, yeah. This is something that can definitely be the foundation of corruption.
So whatever is a color is necessarily red debate. It looks like the defender is just being stupid or deliberately contentious. But so these collected topics are kind of the preliminary for more complicated things. So this is showing us the template.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I was just thinking, like, I don't know the answer, but what topic could you have something like this where something so obvious, but then the defender doesn't get it because it's such a difficult topic. So I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah. It depends, because as you're studying in the monasteries and you're going through all these different topics, some things you haven't learned yet. And so you may hear a term and you think you know what it means, but you don't. And so if you get into a debate about it, then very likely, you impute the wrong meaning to something, and this can happen. Yeah, I don't think people are trying to be ornery. Yeah, but maybe they haven't studied something, or, they just don't get it. Yeah, I mean, wait until you start giving Dharma talks and you explain something and you think it's completely reasonable, and people are looking at you like, yeah. And then you begin to say, oh, just because I think something is reasonable doesn't mean everybody gets it. Yeah. Or look at the times when you're in the audience and the teacher says something and you're the one going. I used to do that all the time with Kansa Rinpoche. You know, I sat like right in front and I would make faces at him. And Venerable Steve, you know, sat over here and he would make faces at Kansa Rinpoche when we didn't agree with things. Yeah, and then we'd interrupt. Yeah, Genla, that doesn't make any sense.
Going back to the example of the couple that you mentioned, but so many relationships are about bad probations. Like, if you love me, you would defend me publicly even though I'm wrong, right?
Exactly.
And then, you know, if you try to answer why, the person would then say, then you don't love me. And we know where that goes. So,
yeah, those are good examples. Yeah, if you really love me, you defend me in public, even though I said something wrong. Yeah, and that person really believes that. They really sincerely believe that. And the other person says, why? Why should I do that? You know, then I just look like a joke, a jerk. You know, as bad enough you do, why do I have to jump in the pond with you? Because you love me. You know, and then this one says, but that's not how I show love. Yes, I love you, but I don't show love by jumping in the, you know, the pond filled with sea monsters with you. Yeah. So yeah, very good example. When you're practicing, one, you know, where you the defender said the wrong steps, yeah, try and write it down, and then we can go over it together in class, especially when you're going back and the defender keeps saying wrong things. It'd be not good to have another example besides this white conch one. Okay. And then also, if somebody, because next week we'll be getting into talking about more about strategies, and there's a few diagrams in there, you know, the P and Q diagrams. If somebody could just put those in a file on the computer in the order in which they come in the text, so that we can show them on here, and then we can talk about it correctly. And you know, where you put, there's two keys, a one where you need to include something that hasn't been included, and a question mark which he leaves out sometimes. Yeah, when you're reading it, you go, what's he talking about? Oh, he left out this second thing. A question mark symbolizing that you don't think what the guy said exists. Yeah, that there isn't an example of that. So if you can just make somebody could make the diagrams. Or if you don't, then just bring the whiteboard and we'll draw them when we come to them.